Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Pundits show with my good self, Ben Dinnery, and my esteemed co-host, Mr. Jason McKenna. How are you, my friend?
I am doing pretty damn good, if I'm honest with you, Ben. As always, I love coming on here, but I'm so close to a huge 100 centennial game week. But you're going to bring in some news in a second that may burst that bubble, shatter things. But we'll tease that up for just a second. And I always have to ask, how the hell are you doing, Ben? Because, you know, we're on-screen couple, aren't we now? We're as you pronounced, married. And how are you doing, my significant other?
Life, we're in this tricky situation where it is the work-life balance is out of sync. Homeschooling, my other partner, the real boss at home, work, and then everything that's in and around COVID. So it's almost like we've got so many spinning plates on the go, and I'm just trying to sort of keep everything balanced and going around and around. But I'm generally very well. FPL wise, I wish I could say that I was looking forward to a potential 3-figure haul this evening. I'm not ruling it out. I do have 2 players involved in tonight's game. It probably would require at least one of those players to score 7. But like I say, I'm not ruling that out. So look, I will live in hope. And in fact, look, if I look in a certain way, it almost looks like I'm on 99 points this week. So yeah, but then I turn the screen the right way around and I'm on 66. You see, no. So look, a little bit disappointing. But let's focus on you. You're the man who's pushing 100 plus points. So fair play to you.
Yeah.
Fair play to you.
Well, I was just going to say as well, you were saying that you're having trouble spinning all the plates at home. But I thought, with your hand skills of 3, 2, 1 and all that, exactly, I thought you'd be a dab hand at keeping the plates up. But yeah, just quickly then, because you've, mentioned it, 95 points so far. And I had the big winner of this week in my team, John Stones. And interestingly enough, I didn't go for the Maverick move. I was going to captain Diaz this game week. If I'd done that, I would have been well over the 100 points. I did say last game week that if you had larger cojones than me, if you had Billy Big, you'd go with one of the City defenders. And nobody in their right mind would have seen that Stones would have got that. But 2 cleans from Man City, just so consistent, so good. I mean, 7 clean sheets in their last 8 games in the Premier League is good. And what I'm also happy about is my bench did all right. Fabio and Smith Rowe also were in the points, but that does mean that I'm picking players that are starting. But let's move into it because we've got game week 20 ahead of us. And we're splitting these up into positional podcasts at the moment, just so that you can have some great insights, but in a more bite-sized, kind of manageable way. And we're looking at goalkeepers and defenders today. And I'm going to come out and say it, and I'm thinking that the meta is moving towards at least 4 defenders each game week in your team, because the goals have not been a flurry recently. Even Man City, they obviously did score a fair few goals this game week in total, but it was a double game week. But, they're still limited to 3 or 2 nils. And what I feel is there's been so many good defensive stop-outs that we might be better investing a little bit of the money that we put originally up top with some cheaper strikers like Bamford, to actually put that into defenders. And I don't know if that's something that you actually agree with there, Ben. Are you feeling that one? Because the Premier League goals per game average has actually gone from huge overperformance on year trends to now underperformance on season averages. So at the moment, it just seems to me like defenders are the good own. So do you like that idea, Ben?
One step ahead of you, Mr. McKenna. And in fact, not
Oof.
just one step, but even going one better. Even contemplating, or did during the double game week, go with a 5 at the back and went with a 5-3-2. And judging by the latest and breaking team news coming from the Liverpool and Burnley game, my one saviour for this remaining saviour, Roberto Firmino, has actually been benched. And that really sums up my, you know,
Oh God.
really that defensive backline and goalkeeper saved this double game week for me. Anywhere past that, second and third part of the pitch have been just an absolute disaster. The only player that I did have a return on was benched, and that was Harry Kane. So look, as it currently stands, I think I'm all in defensive. Definitely.
Love that.
I'm looking, especially since I've doubled up on City defenders for, I've caught this Rich vein, this hot streak, the Diaz. I'm very disappointed that Cancelo was benched for the first game of week 19. Didn't come as a total surprise. Hugely disappointed because I think he is one of the players that inherently is at risk of being rotated by Pep. I think there's only for me, even though Stones is in great form, I think it's still Diaz is the one that's nailed. He's me 99%er. Stones is just slightly below him, but there's still concerns there. We've still got the likes of Laporte, Ake, who can come in, and if Pep wants to change his formation or do some slight tweaks, you can even bring the likes of maybe Kyle Walker into a back three, or Cancelo. So look, defense at the minute is winning me games. Attackers will win your games, defenses will win your championships.
I love that phrase, and I think that's so apt for Fantasy Premier League at the moment. So let's go through some of the defensive assets that we're looking at there. Of course, you've talked about the Man City double up. I think that's a good one. There is always that concern with John Stones, or as I like to imagine Pep calls him, Hon Stones. He's a decent pick, and actually he's more owned. That's such a dad joke, isn't it? He's more owned than Diaz, which absolutely amazes me still. Diaz has been nailed on. I mean, he's like a bridge up there, so secure in that Man City team. He's not really under consideration, whereas Stones is more of the one who could be displaced by the likes of Laporte, Ake. But it just makes you wonder what is going on behind the scenes at City, that Laporte, one of the biggest signings that Pep has made there, one of the best left-footed centre-backs worldwide, is not getting into that team. But looking at goalkeepers, we do have to look at them a little bit. People tend not to do these sorts of transfers, but one that grabbed my eye. Now, I've called a little bit on the defensive kind of waxing lyrical about Fulham, but I was looking at Areola's data for the season, and actually he might be a decent-ish pick if you're a little bit bored of the McCarthy's and Martinez's, because in terms of his abilities so far this season, he's got the second best XG prevented of any goalkeeper, and he's actually kept out 4.3 goals, which is magnificent. Only the religious man himself, the Pope, has stopped more. He's fourth best for most shots inside the box saved, with 67 saves in total. He's there for the bonus points. I think, looking at Fulham's games coming up as well, they got some decent-ish games on the horizon. My only worry is that in the last 6 game weeks, now looking at it, Fulham have had an XG conceded of 7.51. They've had, a fair amount of big chances conceded near the bottom half of the table. It does make you worry about the realistic kind of upsurge narrative in their defensive quality. But Areola is a good goalkeeper. I think he will kind of see these clean sheet or at least bonus point saves coming to him, because Fulham do look a little bit sturdy at the back. They obviously have played Manchester United. They've had a few tough games recently, so it's a hard one to evaluate. I think with this kind of turn in fixtures for them, with some longer term kind of looking at it, he could be a decent owner. I mean, looking at their fixtures as well, they've got Brighton, who can't seem to score. West Brom, not so good. Leicester's the big difficult one. Vardy, Maddison, Barnes are all on good form. But then West Ham, Everton, Sheffield United, Crystal Palace, they ebb and flow with being able to score goals. For a medium to longer term own, he's not a bad shout, I think, Areola. What do you think on that one, Ben?
Look, I totally agree. Fulham, if it took half a season almost for them to acclimatise again to the top flight. But yes, look a lot more solid defensively. Almost, they're playing well without getting the results. But for me, if you look at expected clean sheets, is a number that I had looked at, and only West Brom have a lower figure than actually Fulham. I think in the last 6 game weeks, Fulham are at 1.03 within that, and that's a slight concern. So if I was looking to maybe delve into that Fulham backline, then almost I would want to offset or have a safety net in place, and that would be, well, actually, what could I get in terms of maybe an attacking assist or a potential goal, from that. And your chances are going to be limited with a goalkeeper in that respect. So therefore, I would be looking at maybe somebody outfield wise. Coming into the season, I was a big fan of Joe Bryan. Didn't really start very well. Fulham conceded a lot of goals, fell out of favour, fell down the pecking order, but did return against Manchester United, funnily enough. But that was mainly due to the fact that Dakova Reid was suspended following collecting his 5th caution of the campaign. So that would be a move that I would expect Scotty Parker to swap back around again, which is unfortunate in the respect of Joe Bryan offers some great attacking numbers, done well when he was in the Premier League initially and in the Championship, but like I say, hasn't really transitioned through to this campaign. Not a keeper, but certainly interested in that back line, possibly just given the price points. But the worrying concern for me is the likelihood of actually keeping a clean sheet, is tough. Although some of the fixtures, are piquing my interest somewhat.
The evaluation that I give a little bit with Fulham here is last 3 games, obviously Manchester United, Chelsea, Tottenham, and before that Southampton, Newcastle, Brighton. So they've had a real tough, if you count Southampton as a fairly decent side, although they don't seem to be scoring goals at the moment, it's a tough run. And I just compare them as well to what my evaluation is comparing them to, so we're talking specifically about Areola here, to the other 4.5-ish goalkeepers. You look at Aston Villa, and actually they've got a more higher XG conceded over the last 6 game weeks. Man United have, actually, interestingly enough. Chelsea, now you compare it to maybe McCarthy at Southampton, but the difference is about 1 goal in terms of XG conceded. Goal attempts in the box, Fulham are actually doing better than the likes of Southampton, Brighton, Aston Villa. All these goalkeepers at around the same point. So I do feel that there's a little bit of change there, and I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye. But I think the point that you hit there, which is really poignant, is people are not going to be looking to do goalkeeper transfers at the moment. It's a bit of a waste of a one. So we'll move that. It's more for people that are wildcarding. So I do want to talk about other defences. As I said, they're Fulham. I'm going to still evaluate for time. Now, a worry for me at the moment, as mentioned there, Man United's defensive data is actually not looking good. I think what the weird trend so far this season is teams that go top of the table then seem to ebb and flow and not do very well. Chelsea were getting near the top and then they've fallen off. Man United are doing the same. Liverpool have now really trailed behind everybody else, but their goals conceded are not by chance over the last 6 game weeks and 8 game weeks. But the other thing is they've actually overperformed in terms of defensive quality. So they should have conceded more, which is worrying to me. They're conceding lots of big chances, lots of shots in the box. In fact, this is what really scares me the most. Over the last 6 game weeks, only West Brom have conceded more goal attempts in the box than Manchester United. Now, the XG conceded is 7.56. But that's still lower half of the table stuff. I'm a Wan-Bissaka owner. It does worry me a little bit to persist with Man United defensive assets. What is your take on that one, Ben? Should they be shifted out?
I'm stuck on Harry Maguire as it currently stands, and it is a slight concern. I'm not heavily reliant on United, or certainly counting on them to bring home the bacon with regards to a tight defence. I'm hoping Harry, is going to get his 3 to 4 or 5 goals per season in this latter half and make up for the disappointing ownership that he's had during the time since I've brought him in. I'm not. Ollie's chopping and changing his team a little bit too much for me. Particularly maybe those shields in the back line. We've seen McTominay in there with Fred, Matic and Pogba. And look, they're fighting on a lot of fronts. There's a lot of fatigue. There's going to be a lot of rotation in and around that. And that can maybe have a little bit of an impact on that back line. We also see the likes of maybe Luke Shaw, who's in and out maybe with Alex Telles. That's going to be one. And then we have Lindelof and Eric Bailey. We think, or we would assume, that the captain Maguire is nailed. It's not, again, I couldn't sort of nail me flag to the mast and say, yeah, you should go for a United defender, because when you look at those numbers, I think it's 61 shots conceded in the box. Across 7 games, that's almost just under 10 shots a game. And law of averages tells you, that there is something just not quite right. Something's a little bit awry. They're great on the eye, United. They seem to go behind and they have this instilled self-belief, this willingness to fight for each other. And everybody have been turning these fixtures around. But from a fantasy perspective and those assets, I'd like to see a little bit more stability in that backline before, I would want to commit really.
Yeah, this is the problem that I'm looking at, and I'm looking at alternatives. And the other point that I would give is Villa's defensive data has also regressed recently. So kind of that early start of the season highs are not being met at the moment. And there's the doubling down there, worries about the COVID crisis. Is that going to affect the team? Will that affect their ability to kind of keep up that high performance? So they're two that I've cited it as almost a bit of a worry. So I want to flip it on to people that we could potentially get involved with. And, you normally look to the top of the table as kind of guidance for where to go. And Leicester are doing great at the moment. Their underlying data in terms of it, 4th best defence over the last 8 game weeks, and have pretty much matched their XG conceded. What I like about them is they're looking a little bit more settled. You and I had quite a few worries because they were littered with injuries, but now the team are looking a little bit back to old form. Castagne's back. Pereira is back in a sense. But there's also this flip side worry of who the hell is going to play. Justin, Castagne, Pereira are all kind of competing for limited defensive positions. So Justin himself has racked up an 1.35 XGI over the last 8, best amongst the Fox defenders. But there is that chance that Pereira might be shoehorned in and replace him. Castagne keeps the left back position. Then you've got James Justin, who's not playing at all. So there's obviously probably the management issue with Pereira coming back from such a big injury. But it's also the question of who is going to be starting. It gives such a headache. You could probably go with somebody like Johnny Evans, but then you're not going to have that goal involvement, that assist potential. But there is also the genuine discussion point of maybe Pereira might be played out of position, because that's where he played at the weekend as a right winger. So with all that kind of confusion and worry there, Ben, is it worth investing in a James Justin, or is it worth kind of waiting to see who's got the nail position?
I mean, some would argue that James Justin has been up there with one of the Leicester City's best performers this season, and for Justin to make way at this point would be, would deem to be a little bit harsh on his performances given what he's done. What we do know with regards to Ricardo Pereira, he returned from a long-term knee injury, ACL, and suffered a setback in his first 45 minutes. So straight away, that's a bit of a red flag with regards to Brendan Rodgers, and quite rightly you touched upon him being managed, and integrated slowly within that team. So what you don't want is, because another setback at this stage conceivably could, rule him out for the remainder of the campaign. So I think Justin is nailed in terms of Premier League starts, maybe for the next few games. But ideally from a management perspective, you'd be looking at maybe a 20-minute integration, a 30-minute, 40-minute, and then possibly a start. So we could be looking at Pereira, certainly pushing and banging contention to be in that starting 11 by early Feb. And that wouldn't, that's not out of the realms of possibility. On the other side, we had an issue with Wesley Fofana. Again, he's brilliant. He's settled into that role alongside Evans, but we've seen him withdrawn after, I think it was 53 minutes, heading into, the first game of the double game week. That was more of a tactical switch after he had picked up the yellow card. However, Soyuncu come in and was excellent during that game as well. And that begged the question, well, is Rodgers going to go for Soyuncu or for Fofana? And how we do know that he went for Fofana, but it's, for me, the players in those positions, it's their shirt to keep. But that they're only one performance away from losing that. Everybody, with the exception for me of Johnny Evans, and I do like Johnny Evans. I think he mightn't have all the pizzazz of some of those other players, but he always chips in with it, with the odd contribution from a set piece. And yeah, I think for me, Johnny Evans would be the one that I would probably look at, just because I'm wanting minutes really, and I'm wanting starts. Although he's never far away from a little knock or a minor niggle himself. So
yeah, it's a good choice in terms of safety there, because I think Leicester as well, talking about it, they've got a good fixture run coming up over the next few weeks. In terms of the fixture ticker, they're actually 5th best for looking forward to positive fixtures. So it's a good shout. It's a good one to keep an eye on. Just the James Justin situation is a little bit irksome and worrisome that I wouldn't put the money there. Now, one that I'm also proposing to have a look at is Everton. Over the last over the last 8 game weeks, they've kept 3 clean sheets, conceded 7 goals, but have the 3rd best XG conceded. I think part of the problem always is Pickford. He's just not a very good goalkeeper and he lets in too many chances. But the side have done good in not allowing too many goal attempts in the box to be conceded, and only 8 big chances conceded over that 8 game week period. Now, I'm saying that Digne is the obvious pick there because of his creative ability, but here we're trying to give you the people with nailed minutes as well, cheaper options, but also that ability to maybe pick up an attacking chance. And I think Mason Holgate is not a bad shout. He actually has the most XGI of any Everton defender over the last 8 games. And so, yes, there is that ability. Again, like Evans, he's not as interesting as the others, but he can be involved with the set-piece work, and he can be assisted by the likes of Digne, James Rodriguez, or whoever's kind of fit in the team, because Everton have had their problems there. It's one that I don't think is too fashionable, but we're looking at defences here. And Everton have done a good job of maybe not scoring a lot, but they've defended fairly well over the last game weeks, and that is why it's reflected in the data. And just one more for you to have your opinion on, Ben, is West Ham. Again, great data. They're looking good, looking solid. What I would say is the kind of fixtures coming up are a little bit more worrisome. So just looking at the actual fixtures coming up on the horizon, they've got Liverpool, they've got Tottenham, and they've got Manchester City going up into game week 26. But then the one that I proposed to, Kufal, who has really been involved in creativity, and looking at the XGI of him, he's actually the 5th best defender for XGI with 1.78 over the last 8 game weeks, and Cresswell is also up there because of his set piece work with 1.23. He's just below James Justin there, but they're cheap enough. I would say Kufal is cheap enough that you can bench him and rotate him with somebody else in your squad. There's certain starters, they will play, and the defence of West Ham is looking fairly good. You know, they've only kept 3 clean sheets in the last 6 game weeks, but still 50% good. But they're the 5th best defence in terms of XG conceded. In terms of big chances conceded, they're doing quite well as well. And goal attempts in the box, they have the 3rd best defence for that. So looking at it, these underlying numbers, David Moyes, we know he is a quality manager. Just on those last 2 options there, before we wind up into the end of the show, Ben, what do you feel about Everton and West Ham? And maybe out of those 2, do you have a favourite to pick?
The concerns I have over Everton, we have Mason Holgate, Michael Keane, Yerry Mina, Ben Godfrey, all can play centrally. So obviously, I know Holgate and Godfrey have been playing out the fullbacks. That was in the absence of Seamus Coleman and Lucas Digne. And that backline did perform quite well. Ancelotti was full of praise. They settled into those roles. But now that those 2 fullbacks are fit, you start Lucas Digne. I mean, I think his first game back off a lengthy absence in the league, returned an assist. It's the obvious one. It's the boring pick. I just, as much as, because, Michael Keane's produced some good data, some good stats, earned the praise of the manager, and, he did, he was dropped off, rested or rotated, however you want to put that. And that is my concern when you've got 4 defenders, all of a similar ilk, who can play, all centrally in there. I think the right back role might be slightly different, and that might go because Seamus Coleman obviously isn't as young as he was, and I don't think he's a shoo-in as he has been previously. So maybe you could shift one of those players out wide. But again, it comes down to opponents and how Ancelotti wants to set up his team. So for me, really, I would say Digne is the only one that I really feel comfortable with. I'm already sitting on somebody like Cancelo, who again isn't nailed, and to have 2 players that potentially may not start, then that could hurt me game week. And then I've got to start to think about, well, actually, have I got the resources on the bench to be able to back that up? Worst case scenario. Touching on West Ham, look, West Ham continue to impress. David Moyes has done a great job. They've carried their full, they're almost up there for me with the likes of what Southampton have produced since Project Restart, what Mick Antonio brings to them. We see with the injury with Arthur Masuaku, there was a move from that back five, or that back five defensively, but offensively they went to a 3 where you had the 2 attacking fullbacks. Switch now to a 4-2-3-1, and they still look as solid and compact. But again, almost they've got confidence, and when you've got somebody up top who can score goals and ease the pressure and ease the burden on that back line, they're playing with a lot more freedom. And Craig Dawson, who came in for Balbuena, who's been sidelined recently due to COVID, he really has grasped that shirt with both hands, and he's forming a great partnership in that back line. So yeah, I like them. I like Kufal. I think he's a great option, and there's nothing not to like really about Cresswell either. So it would be difficult to put anybody off those. And you can look at those fixtures and you could think, but Liverpool on firing, heading into tonight's game. Is it 4 games Liverpool haven't scored now? So we will see what happens against Burnley, but I'm still of the mind that this fixture difficulty rating, this perception of really the big teams, it very much just comes down to a particular point. At the moment, I would say Leicester, Man City, or West Ham, even in there, are teams that are really Manchester United. They're maybe the 4 that you don't really want to be playing. Then you can maybe scratch beneath it just slightly. Tottenham. Then under that, like Liverpool, would you look at them? And I think West Ham would look at that game and think, what, we're playing them at home at the London Stadium. We've got our tails up. If Liverpool go another game or pick up another defeat, then it's really backs against the walls for Liverpool. They're going to be in an unfamiliar territory, and there's a difference between playing with a swagger and playing without pressure at the top of the league when everything that you seem to do is coming off. When you're chasing games and you need the points, that changes the dynamics, the thought process, the decision making. It will affect what Klopp's doing on the pitch. We've seen big rotation tonight, like I say, Salah out, Firmino out, Shaqiri out. Is this brought about through fatigue, or does he just want to freshen his team up to try and kickstart the Reds back into it? So, look, I think West Ham are in a really good place and would give them every chance of getting a result against Liverpool.
Well, that's a good shout then. That's reassuring to people tuning in. And the one final thing before I wrap up here is I have to say that Chelsea's second best games over the next 6 game weeks, but they aren't looking good. If Kante and Zuma are back soon, then maybe, but James and Chilwell, a lot of people are talking about them in the community. James is super cheap. Chilwell obviously has that assist potential, but the bread and butter with defensive assets is clean sheets, and Chelsea's underlying defensive data is super worrying. Since game week 11, the team have been in the bottom half of the table for defensive data, conceding far too many big chances, and actually have conceded more shots in the box than Sheffield United. That is not good enough for them. They've underperformed on XG, which is showing that maybe Edward Mendy is not this saviour that they're looking for yet. I think the jury's still out there. The whole team is lacking confidence. And at the moment, these might be the type of games that Chelsea need to restart and reset. But I'm not confident in them. But that is all that we've got time for today in our more bite-sized version of Premier League asset discussion. We will be back with midfielders and attack, so make sure to subscribe, leave a like and share with your friends and whoever else is playing this FPL with you, because you know, we're going to be making some consistent content through the rest of the season, giving you the best defensive, midfield and attacking options to put in your teams. And of course, Ben is always delivering the best insights into whether players should be on the pitch with their injuries or whether they'll be rested or managed. So yes, thank you for tuning in once again tonight.
And yeah, it's a thanks for me as well. I hope you enjoyed this bite-sized version of our podcast. We will be bringing, it's a new format, brand new format, and we will be bringing you other bite-sized options with regards to potential player picks as we build up to any given game week. So keep your eyes peeled as we focus on midfield options next up. But for now, it's a bye from me.
And it's a bye from me.